Howdy folks, I'm Colonel Sanders and you're not. My sister and I are going to make regular white loaf bread. And I'm going to share with you the recipe that I use and hopefully you can enjoy it too at home. This video is going to be kind of short, but the process takes 2 to 3 hours out of your day to make. But the ingredients are really simple. For the white bread, you're going to need 1 1/4 cup of water. You're going to need 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 teaspoons of sugar, 3 teaspoons of salt, and use a package of yeast. Not the full thing. There's going to be a little bit left. Do a teaspoon of yeast. You got me? You feel me? Teaspoon of yeast. And you're going to need 1 tablespoon of flour. And you're going to need 3 cups and 1/4 cup of flour. The directions: you're going to mix the butter and the sugar and the salt into a bowl of hot water. You're going to put a tablespoon of flour into the water with the mix. And you're then going to put a tablespoon of the yeast in there. The yeast, you want to wait for 5 minutes after mixing it so that it bubbles. You want it to bubble. My yeast is very good. It always bubbles. After your yeast is bubbling, you want to put that into a big bowl of flour, 3 cups of flour and 1/4 cup. I'm saying that for myself because I forgot to do that the first 6 times we filmed. After you do that, you mix it up, you make it, you flour your cutting board, whatever you're doing. You knead that bread, you knead it, you punch it, you squeeze it, you stretch it, you do whatever you got to do to it. Nice and slow. Nice and slow. And then you're going to grease a bowl. And you're going to put the dough in the bowl. You're going to roll it around and get it oiled up. You want to oil that bread up. Okay, you're going to oil. We're not making cake, we're making bread. You're going to oil the bread up. You're going to put the bread in the bowl, put a wet towel over the bowl, put a dry towel over that bowl, let it sit for an hour, take it out, punch it a little bit, put it back in, let it rise some more for about a half hour, and then you're going to put the oven on 350 depending on your oven and bake it for about 50 minutes. And that's it. That's all you need to make this bread. So, we're going to make the bread. Fun fact here, how we can relate this to Kentucky Fried Chicken. Uncle Harley made his first loaf of white bread when his sister was 2 years old. And he was so proud of this bread that he picked his brother up and his little sister, and they walked across the county to where their mother worked at the canning factory, and they were showing off this loaf of white bread. And you can look at that interview. I have it on my channel. It's also on a few YouTube channels across the platform here. Uncle Harley talked about that in his interview. The other thing is, we're going to use a lot of flour. There's going to be flour getting on me. This is why Uncle Harley wore a white suit. Pete Harmon convinced him to get a white suit because it covered the flour stains opposed to wearing a black suit. So, with my handy dandy recipe here. Now, Uncle Harley didn't keep all of his recipes secret. He had a recipe book. It's called 20 Favorite Recipes of Colonel Harlan Sanders, which you can pick up at the JRN location in Corbin, Kentucky at their gift shop at the Sanders Cafe. And we have been cooking those. We got about 10 recipes in that playlist. We still have more to go. My bad, original gangster. It's 1/4 cup. 1 cup and 1/4 of water. That is what that looks like. I made a mistake, and that's why it came out real small. So we're going to do it again. We're going to mix these two together, and I'm going to mix that into here. Ooh. 3 of these. Mm. 2 sugars. 2. All right. And this is our yeast mix. My yeast does bubble. So now we make our bread. Dough, almost like you're making pancakes, baking pancakes, making pancakes. You want to knead the dough as much as possible. I don't need it. I don't need it. I definitely don't need it. I don't need it. I need it! Alright. There is our bread dough. Isn't it beautiful? Look at it glisten in the sun. In the description, I'm going to put the full recipe down there so you can follow it. I made a mistake recording earlier because I get a little nervous when I'm recording. This is all new to me. So you want to mix the butter, sugar, and salt in the warm water together. That's what the instructions I have say. And then we did this flawlessly without recording like 6 times. Then we add the yeast to that. So this bowl will be our dough ball. I want to let it rise. Alright folks, so that recipe calls for 1 hour of sitting after kneading, and then you gotta knead it more. But this recipe is different. We're changing it. Right, so we consulted the other Colonel, which is our grandfather Ed, the other Colonel Sanders, who makes bread. And he said, if it's not working out right, knead it more, which kneading creates more gluten, which makes it more elastically. And that's what makes it look like that. So, as you're following this, it may not take you an hour, depending. I have made loaves that look like this in 2 hours. We let it sit for an hour, knead it, and then put it in the oven, and it comes out perfect each time. But what the other Colonel says is you stretch this. You can do this about 4 times, not 4 times kneading like this, 1, 2, 3, 4. You do this 4 times, and that's about 4 hours, roughly. You do it every half hour, and you can do that. And the more you knead it, the better it's going to come in the oven. After you're done kneading the bread, you're going to put it in the oven for 375 for 50 minutes, and that's roughly what I do it on. And it usually comes out perfect. The first few loaves, like I said, came out perfect, doing it the way that I instructed in the video until we get to this point. This time I had to do some things differently. So if you're running into some issues, you want to do what I did. You want to start kneading it more every half hour, and eventually it will create enough gluten in the dough to be elastic and also to be able to stretch it enough to knead it and put it in the oven to rise. So if you're running into those issues, that's what you need to do. We're going to do 375 for 50 minutes, and we'll see what that does. This is the final product of this particular loaf of bread. If you follow the instructions, your success is guaranteed, no question about it. And not that we're sponsored or anything, but you get these jackets from KFC's merchandise shop through their website, or you can find it on any of their social media platforms. I like it, fits me, and it's late at night. Again, this takes a few hours out of your day to do if you're going to make bread. So if you want to cut the bread like this, you can. Like little thin slices. And if you follow the instructions to the book, your success is guaranteed, no question about it. However, unless you're like me, and it's like today, and we had to do this 6 times in the process of filming this to get it right because the yeast actually was bad, but it did bubble. So you can have little sandwich bread pieces, and just for the heck of it, just for this video, if you want some Texas toast, because everything's bigger in Texas. Want some Texas toast? It's good bread. It looks good. It tastes good. It looks delicious. So, trial and error. Again, if you're having issues with it, with your yeast, I'm going to tell you, I don't recommend getting the Great Value packet yeast. Our grandfather showed us what to get. It is this yeast jar, and if anybody's asking, our grandpa Ed is a master bread maker. He makes bread very excellently. He had the same issue that I had that you may run into if your yeast isn't too good, where it's not rising, it's too firm, it's too dry, it's not doing the things that it needs to do. So if you're having those issues, do what I said previously in this video, where you start kneading the bread some more every half hour instead of letting it sit for an hour after kneading it once. Next time that we do it, we're going to do Italian bread. I'm going to show you a different way of doing bread with Italian. It's going to be my grandfather's recipe for Italian bread. Do what our grandfather suggested. Now, there's probably master bakers out there that have been baking for 40 years. If you want to throw your 2 cents in, feel free to do it. Feel free to do it. I welcome all criticism of cooking, and I'm open to learning anything about cooking. So, with my grandfather, he just said, one, get a different kind of yeast. And don't do the instant rising yeast. We had to do that with this particular loaf. We use instant rising yeast, but you want to use active yeast, dry active yeast. And there's a jar version of it, and I'm going to pick it up, and when we do the Italian bread, I will show you how we do that and what the jar looks like. I never cut the ends, I just eat the ends because they end up looking like that for me. But maybe you come up with a better one. I like to see what your bread turned out like, and if you got a better white bread recipe, put it below and I'll give it a try. Any other recipes you guys want to try, want me to try and put on the channel, I'll do it. But this channel is kind of switching over to still a cooking thing. And I'm going to take suggestions of folks. I'm going to take some family recipes that we do have. And it might be not be the big KFC recipe secret of Uncle Harley's or his big recipes that he has. But this family does come from a long line of cooks. We have a lot of recipes, and I'm allowed to share some of those with you. Ones that are not owned by corporate, and ones that I do actually know and that the family doesn't have to pretend to know for clicks and views. So I'm going to be sharing some of those. But if you have recipes you want me to try, I will add that to a new playlist of Cooking with Colonel Sanders of recipes that people want me to try. So we'll do copycat recipes, family recipes, we'll do my own theories on recipes, and suggested recipes. So whatever you guys want me to try, link it, comment it, and I'll give it a try. I like the way that it tastes, I like the way that it comes out. Usually I could get it a little bit more uniform than that little notch right there, but that's not a big deal. If your bread's coming out like this, this is bad yeast. This is an example of bread that doesn't rise. I want to show you. If it's coming out like this, this is not what it's supposed to look like. It's supposed to look like the loaf that we just made here. So, there's my bread.
I'd like to point out that looks like a chicken leg.